Most heavyweight champions end up broke, brain damaged, or chasing fame in reality TV shows just to pay the bills. Lennox Lewis ended up on a private hilltop in Jamaica, wealthier than when he retired, staring at a chessboard instead of a punch-drunk opponent. Today, we are stepping inside the Lion's Gate, the multi-million-dollar sanctuary of the last undisputed heavyweight king. We'll uncover the specific investment strategy that built this paradise, the secret room where he plots his business moves, and the one game he still refuses to lose. London penthouses and Miami mansions were available to him, yet Lewis chose a quiet, gated community in Montego Bay for a very specific reason. The Trial Club functions less like a neighborhood and more like a fortress of old-world privacy where billionaires go to disappear rather than be seen. Lewis understood early on that true luxury isn't about being recognized at a nightclub, but about owning a view that nobody else can access without an invitation. You aren't just paying for square footage here, you are paying for silence, because in this tax bracket, peace is the ultimate flex. Driving up the winding tropical road leads you to a gate that resembles a border crossing into a sovereign state rather than a simple home entrance. Unlike the flashy security setups you see in Los Angeles where armed guards stand outside for show, this is discreet, military-grade protection wrapped in tropical foliage. Defending his perimeter is something Lewis spent a lifetime mastering, so he designed this entrance to ensure he sees you long before you ever see him. It is defensive strategy applied to real estate, allowing him to control the distance just like he did in the ring. Instead of a modern glass box or a stereotypical Caribbean hut, the villa stands as a masterclass in colonial elegance. The structure physically represents Lewis's own biography, blending the stoic, structured British brickwork on the foundation with the open-air, laid-back verandas of his Jamaican heritage. He didn't buy a style, he built his life story, proving that a home should mirror the owner's soul rather than just copying a magazine trend. Character beats trend every time, and the center of this biography isn't a boxing ring. Right past the grand living room sits the most dangerous spot in the house, which is a simple table with a chessboard that remains constantly set up for battle. Lewis famously described boxing as chess with blood, and in retirement, he simply removed the blood while keeping the strategic mind sharp. This isn't a decorative piece for guests to admire, but a mental gymnasium where he runs drills on patience and foresight every single morning. If you stop sharpening your mind, you start losing your edge. And for Lewis, checkmate is a habit. Standing on the main terrace helps you immediately understand why this specific plot of land costs exponentially more than the ones at the bottom of the hill. The view commands an unbroken line of sight over the Caribbean Sea, symbolizing his reign as the undisputed king looking down on the division. Elevation in real estate is often a psychological play that separates you from the noise and chaos of the world below. You aren't just looking at the water, you are looking at total freedom, and that view dictates the price. Most celebrity pools are designed strictly for parties and photos, but Lewis uses his infinity edge for the same reason he used ice baths, which is physical preservation. Swimming remains the one low-impact exercise that allows a heavyweight frame to maintain muscle without destroying the joints, so Lewis swims religiously. He treats the water as a therapeutic tool rather than a recreational toy, which explains why he moves better at 58 than most heavyweights do at 40. Longevity requires maintenance, and for him, water is the fountain of youth. Anyone walking into the main lounge expecting to be blinded by gold belts and trophies on every surface will be disappointed. Lewis famously keeps his accolades discreetly tucked away in a dedicated space rather than cluttering the living areas where he relaxes with family. This choice serves as a psychological power move that separates Lennox the boxer from Lennox the man, preventing his past glory from overshadowing his present life. A king doesn't need to wear his crown to dinner to prove who he is. You won't find a French chef making soufflés in this kitchen because it is the domain of authentic Jamaican cuisine like ackee and saltfish. While many retired heavyweights balloon in weight once the training camps stop, Lewis sticks to a diet rich in natural island-grown ingredients that fuel the body without inflammation. He understands that the battle against the scale is the one fight most champions lose in retirement, so he treats his nutrition with the same discipline he had in 1999. Health is the real wealth, and you simply cannot out-train a bad diet. Lennox avoided buying a house next to YouTubers or rappers, choosing instead to live among neighbors like Ralph Lauren and other legitimate titans of industry. This was a calculated decision to surround himself with old money, meaning people who have sustained wealth for decades rather than chasing fleeting new money trends. When your neighbor is a global fashion mogul, the conversations at the clubhouse are about legacy and asset management, not buying flashy cars. Your network dictates your net worth, but the most valuable asset here is invisible. No pet tigers are roaring in the backyard, and no 24-hour house parties vibrate the walls here. The defining feature of this villa is a profound, almost heavy silence that Lewis describes as essential for his mental clarity. After decades spent listening to screaming crowds, bell rings, and trash talk, he purchased an environment where the only sound is the wind through the palm trees. Silence is a luxury that only the truly secure can afford to enjoy, because noise distracts while silence focuses. Getting past the front gate is hard, but receiving an invite to stay in the guest wing is nearly impossible due to his strict "no yes men" policy. Lewis dismantled his large entourage years ago when he realized that people who agree with everything you say are dangerous to both your bank account and your ego. The only people allowed in this villa are those who challenge him intellectually or have been with him since the amateur days in Canada. He invites loyalty rather than applause because keeping the circle tight is the only way to stay safe. This understated room with the mahogany desk is where Lennox Lewis generates more income today than he did in some of his early title fights. While other boxers rely on autograph signings, Lewis uses this space to manage a diverse portfolio of real estate and global investments. He successfully transitioned from being the talent to being the businessman, ensuring his family's wealth lasts for generations rather than just one lifetime. The pen has proven to be mightier than the jab. Fans usually expect a retired champion to have a massive dungeon filled with iron and sweat, but Lewis's home gym is surprisingly compact. He realized years ago that he no longer needs to train for 12 rounds of war, so he trains for 30 years of quality life by focusing on cardio and flexibility rather than brute strength. It represents a shift in mindset from performance to preservation, proving that the smartest athletes know when to stop lifting heavy and start moving smart. Muscle fades, but mobility lasts. While the villa is undeniably Jamaican in spirit, the disciplined and orderly layout of the interior reveals the subtle influence of his Canadian upbringing. Lewis moved to Canada at age 12 and won Olympic gold for them, and that structured North American efficiency keeps the island vibes from becoming chaotic. It creates a perfect fusion of Caribbean soul and Canadian organization, resulting in a home that feels relaxed but functions like a Swiss watch. He took the best of both worlds because your environment shapes your habits. You won't see walls filled with generic modern art just to display wealth, because Lewis curates pieces that reflect the deep history of the African diaspora and Caribbean culture. Every painting and sculpture serves as a history lesson for his children, reinforcing their identity so they understand they come from strength, not just privilege. He treats art as an educational tool rather than decoration, ensuring the legacy on the walls is as powerful as the legacy in the ring. Culture is the ultimate inheritance. The way the estate operates reveals the chessmaster personality that made him famous, because he doesn't just fix problems, he anticipates them 3 moves ahead. Whether it's storm-proofing the villa before hurricane season or upgrading infrastructure before it breaks, he applies the same prophylactic strategy to homeownership that he used against David Tua. Most people wait for the roof to leak, but Lewis fixes it while the sun is shining because proactive beats reactive every time. Walking through his garden to pick fresh mangoes, breadfruit, and coconuts provides Lennox with his greatest joy, despite the millions sitting in his bank account. It connects him to the humble island life he was born into, grounding him in nature rather than disconnecting him in an ivory tower. There is a specific kind of wealth found in eating food that grew in your own dirt, which is a luxury that no Michelin star restaurant can replicate. Money buys the land, but patience grows the fruit. This plush, acoustically treated room is where the professor comes out to study the current generation of heavyweights like Tyson Fury and Alexander Usyk. He watches fights here not as a fan, but as an analyst, breaking down footwork and mistakes on a massive screen, and often spotting flaws that the commentators miss. It serves as the only place in the house where the violence of the sport is allowed to enter, kept safely behind a screen and analyzed with cold logic. The king is always watching the game he conquered. We are halfway through the tour of the Lion's Den, and we've already seen that true wealth is about privacy and discipline, not just flash. I'm breaking down the smartest financial moves of athletes every week, so if you want to build your own legacy, whether it's in real estate or your bank account, take a second to subscribe. It's the smartest move on the board. Now let's head to the garage to see the difference between rich and wealthy. Open the garage doors and you won't find a neon green Lamborghini or a fleet of hypercars designed for Instagram clout. Lewis understands that low-slung supercars are useless on winding island roads, opting instead for high-end, rugged luxury SUVs that offer comfort and capability. It is the garage of a man who no longer feels the need to rev his engine to get attention, creating a sharp contrast to the look-at-me culture of modern influencers. He buys cars to drive, not to park, because wealth whispers while rich screams. For 2 decades, his mornings began with brutal 4 a.m. runs in the freezing cold. But today, the alarm clock has been replaced by natural sunlight. His ritual now centers on meditation and coffee on the veranda, setting a mental intention for the day rather than rushing into physical punishment. He realized that in the second half of life, reducing stress is more important for longevity than increasing heart rate. You don't have to suffer to be successful anymore, and peace is the new power. A common misconception about boxers is that they are uneducated brutes, but Lewis has always identified as a pugilist specialist who values intellect over aggression. His home is filled with books on history, business, and philosophy, reflecting a man who would rather discuss economic theory than his greatest knockouts. He proves that the muscle that truly separates the goods from the greats is the one inside the skull. If you can't outthink them, you can't beat them. History gives us a brutal split-screen comparison when you look at Mike Tyson's 52-room mansion, which was eventually abandoned and sold due to bankruptcy. Lewis's estate has only appreciated in value, standing as a monument to financial literacy, while Tyson's former estates were monuments to financial chaos and excess. It serves as a physical reminder that winning the title is the easy part, while keeping the money requires a completely different skill set. Chaos leaves a bill, but discipline pays a dividend. This estate functions as more than just a secluded hideout. It acts as the operational headquarters for the inexplicable amount of charity work he does across Jamaica. Through the LOC Foundation, Lewis uses the influence of his castle to build community centers and support underprivileged youth in the surrounding parishes. He understands that a king who isolates himself inside the palace eventually loses the respect of the people outside the walls. You have to give back to keep it. One of the most unique events held at the villa isn't a boxing clinic, but a chess tournament for local school children. Lewis invites kids up to the big house not to teach them how to throw a jab, but to teach them the consequences of making a bad move on the board. He uses the game to instill critical thinking skills that will help them navigate life's traps long after they leave his property. One move changes everything, so he focuses on building thinkers rather than fighters. Tucked away in climate-controlled storage are items that belong in the Smithsonian, from the gloves he used to knock out Tyson to the trunks he wore against Vitaly Klitschko. He treats these items not as old gym gear, but as historical artifacts that require preservation for future generations to see. By archiving his own history within the villa, he ensures that the narrative of his career is told by him, not by auction houses selling off his memories. History needs a caretaker, and he owns his past. You can tell a lot about a man by how he treats the people who cook his food and clean his floors. Lewis operates his household staff not as servants, but as a corner team, applying the same respect he gave to the legendary Emmanuel Steward. He understands that loyalty is the most expensive commodity in the world, and you cannot buy it with a paycheck alone. You buy it with dignity. When the staff feels like family, the security creates itself. The most heavily guarded secret in the villa isn't a safe full of cash, but the privacy of his wife and children. Lewis has masterfully kept his kids out of the tabloid cycle, using the estate's isolation to give them a childhood that feels normal rather than celebrity-obsessed. He built a wall high enough to keep the cameras out so his family could grow up without the distortion of fame. The villa is a shield, and fame stops at the gate. Purchasing this land decades ago was arguably one of the best knockouts of his career from a purely financial standpoint. Real estate values in the Trial Club have skyrocketed as billionaires flee crowded cities for private islands, meaning his retirement home has likely outperformed the S&P 500. He bought the dip on privacy before the rest of the world realized how valuable silence would become, parking his money where it would grow. Seeing a fighter who is completely at peace creates a strange intimidation factor that unnerves active fighters who are still struggling with their demons. Lewis's tranquil lifestyle sends a message to the boxing world that he has nothing left to prove, which is the ultimate form of psychological dominance. He doesn't need to trash talk on podcasts to stay relevant because his happiness is the flex. A resting lion is still a lion. If you look at Floyd Mayweather's big boy mansion, it is a temple to consumption filled with marble, cars in the living room, and constant noise. Lewis's home is the polar opposite, serving as a temple to contentment that values nature, wood, and air over gold leaf and velvet. It highlights the difference between new money that needs to scream to be heard and old money energy that whispers because it knows who it is. Flash fades, but style remains. Active heavyweights will occasionally make the pilgrimage up the hill to sit on that veranda and seek counsel from the last undisputed king. Lewis uses the villa as a mentorship academy, offering wisdom to the next generation not in a sweaty gym, but over a glass of juice with the ocean in the background. He teaches them that the goal isn't just to win the belt, but to own the hill. The oracle speaks softly, and the path is clear if you listen. Visitors walking through the hallways describe a palpable weight to the atmosphere, describing the feeling of a chapter that has been permanently closed with a victory. There is no sense of unfinished business here, no lingering regret that haunts so many retired athletes who feel they quit too soon. The house radiates the energy of a mission that was fully accomplished, and the king sleeps well. Many athletes claim they will move back to their roots, but eventually retreat to London or Los Angeles for the convenience and the limelight. Lewis stayed in Jamaica because he realized that the US and UK are places to do business, but the island is the only place to truly live. He refused to trade his peace for proximity to the paparazzi, proving he values his soul more than his social standing. Home is where the peace is, so he planted his flag and stayed. Is this the ultimate athlete retirement home? It isn't the biggest, it isn't the most expensive, and it certainly isn't the flashiest. But it is the most successful because it represents a man who kept his health, kept his money, and kept his mind intact enough to enjoy it all. It is the physical manifestation of a perfect game of chess, and he beat the game. Lennox Lewis didn't just win in the ring. He won the war against the athlete's curse. He proved that if you treat your life like a chess match rather than a brawl, you end up on a hill in Jamaica instead of in a courtroom. He kept his millions, his mind, and his legacy. And that's it from us today. Until next time, thank you for watching.